Welcome, everyone. I'm Tracy Fitzpatrick, and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's webinar, Microsoft Azure Administrator Masterclass. And presenting today's topic is Ranjeet Singh. Ranjeet has more than 12 years of experience in the field of technical administration, installation and configuration, migration, technical support, as well as troubleshooting. He also possesses over 6 years of experience in Azure, Office 365, and SharePoint. He's well versed in cloud architecture and is highly skilled in providing hands-on training experience in hybrid and multi-cloud environments. Ranjeet specializes in establishing an inviting environment so that his students can bring real-world examples into the conversation and make learning fun, intriguing, and insightful. Please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored to your specific requirements. If you are interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you'll get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adapting to change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We do have 9 practice areas in which we specialize. They encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the Cloud Practice Area. Netcom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio of courses for the topic being covered today. Our upcoming classes include various trainings on the given courses. You can also access a variety of marketing assets, such as the free training and blogs, by clicking on the available event handout. These offerings can be found with a simple search on our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session will provide an official introduction to the Microsoft Azure Administrator role. This masterclass will give an overview of how to manage Azure identities and governance, implement and manage storage, monitor and backup Azure resources, and much more. And now I would like to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To begin with, you do have the option to view in full screen by clicking on the full screen button on the right side of the GoToWebinar viewer. Simply hit the escape key to exit the full screen. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters here in the questions pane, and we will address them at the end of the session. And to get the best out of today's events, we've included the slides, courses we talk about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. You may refer to them at any time to get a better understanding of today's topic. And we do realize that some of you may have to leave early and want to let you know that as you do leave the session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to take a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience and improve our future sessions for you. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. And now I'd like to pass this over to our trainer to present today's topic. Hey, Ranjeet, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Ranjeet Singh, your trainer for this Azure Administration Masterclass. During this session, we are going to look into the major services offered into the Azure Administration track. That's AZ104. Before we get started with the technical content, let's get to know about each other. This is me, Ranjeet Singh. I'm based out of India. I have total years of experience, around 15 years. Have been Microsoft certified trainer for last 8 years. I have been working on multiple technologies into Microsoft domain and with other partner technologies as well. My first certification for Azure was in 2014, and then after the journey continues, I have been working on Azure, Microsoft 365, SharePoint, and with the role of cloud consultant, cloud architect, and the migration consultant role, which I currently hold. I have been enabling the organization to make a discovery of their digital estate from the on premise and make a move towards cloud, how they can go and easily adopt the cloud services. And being part of that team, I have other cloud certifications as well, which includes the GCP as well as the Oracle professional certification. Talking about Azure, I deliver Azure Foundation. That's the fundamental course. From that, Azure Administration, Azure Solution Architect, Network Engineer, Security Engineer. I do take care of all these trainings as well as these are part of my consultancy business. Now, talking about this particular session, this session is going to have these 6 key areas for the discussion. The first one will how we can go and get started with Azure services. What are the tools through which you can go and manage the Azure services? Second, we are going to look at the identities concept, how you can go and create identities into the Azure Active Directory, how the users groups can be created, how you can go and assign roles to them, what is the importance of governance for adopting the cloud services, and what are the features available to go and do the governance and compliance over the cloud services? After that, we are going to look at the network services, the virtual machine, which is one of the primary offering into infrastructure as a service. And we'll end this session with a quick discussion around Azure storage services. During this session, we are going to have a break after an hour into this session around Azure network services. So let's get started with the first topic for the day, the tools for managing the Azure services. Now, Azure portal allows user to build, manage, monitor everything from simple web applications to complex cloud application, which can be a single tier or a multi-tier environment. And to go and get started with the cloud service management, you have multiple ways of connecting to the cloud. You can go and use Azure Portal, which is a GUI interface. I'm going to demonstrate the same. We can go and use a Cloud Shell, which is a command line management tool where the users can use the PowerShell or a bash based prompt to manage the services offered over Azure. You can go and do the deployment of the command line tool on your local machine as well, which is referred as Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI. CLI is a bash-based prompt. PowerShell is the framework which is available in all Microsoft operating system, also available in the cross-platform. You can go and deploy a module for the Azure management over there. You can go and use Azure mobile application, which gives you an interface to go look at the current configuration. You can even access the Cloud Shell over the mobile app to do the management of the services over Azure. And you can go and check all your current running resources. If you want to go and do the management, creation of resource, deletion of resource, modification, you can go and perform all those tasks. Also, we have a tool referred as ARM template. ARM template is a deployment of infrastructure as a code, which gives the capability to the user or to the admins to define all their infrastructure into a file. This file is the JSON file which is available for the user, and user can go and connect to the portal using the command line tool or the GUI. They can import these ARM template and create resources. And when I say create resources, it can be one single resource which you want to deploy, or you can create the whole application stack. It can be a full application stack deployment, which can be executed with infrastructure as a code. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quick discussion for all the services which are available, and post that service discussion, I'll have a quick demonstration to help you understand how these tools, how these services can be used into the Azure environment. Now, talking about the portal, I'm going to do a quick demonstration. How does it looks like? So I have my Azure portal open here, but if you want to get started with it, you have to go to portal.azure.com. This is the first page from where you go and start getting access to Azure services. Now, of course, I'm going to log on to this portal because I do have a Azure subscription with me. If you do not have a Azure subscription, Microsoft do offers you a free Azure account, which you can go and avail to get a hands-on experience over the Azure services. This subscription provides you 200 USD dollars to be consumed in 30 days. And then there are few services which are free tier. You can go and do the use of these services. You can go and learn about these services with the hands-on experience right over the Azure portal. And there are few services which are available for 12 months. You can see all these details right over the documentation. And this is your first interaction with Azure. Now, on this portal, because this is a GUI interface, you can go and learn about Azure, as well as you can deploy the resources as per your business requirement. The first option which we start with is the portal menu, from where you can access all the services which are there in the favorite categories, and these are out of the box. As soon as you go and get a subscription for Azure, you can access all these favorites. You can add your own services into this favorite list as well. If you want to go and see all the services available on Azure, you have this all service button. We have a 200 plus service offering available for the clients, for the users who are going to opt for Azure services. And you see a categorized view of all these services. And if you have no clues where to start with, I would recommend to go and get started with the search box. The benefit of using the search box is, if you know about a service which you want to get started with, you just type that name. For example, I want to learn about virtual machine. I can go and type virtual machine. And in response to that, the portal is going to give you information categorized in services, marketplace, and documentation. So using the search box, you can go and get the service configuration window. You can go and look at the third party services which are available into this category, as well as if you have no clues about a specific service. I know about virtual machine because I heard one of my colleague talking about it, but I don't know what to do with that virtual machine. What are the capabilities of virtual machine? The third segment gives you that information. What is a virtual machine? How you can go and consume virtual machine on Azure? You can actually go and find all these information directly from the Microsoft documentation. You click over any page and you get the details of what the service is and how you can go and consume the service into the Azure environment. Now, this is the first method of interacting with Azure. As we were talking about, you can go and get the tools up and running. This is Azure portal. Also, if you are someone who have a experience of working on Azure, you have been working on Azure for a couple of months or years, then preferably you are not going to start with Azure portal. You prefer to use the scripted deployments. And for running those scripts, for running the commands, you have a browser based access to the Azure management, which is Cloud Shell, or you can go and use the locally installed tools as well. What is Cloud Shell? Cloud Shell is going to provide you a command line management over the browser. So you are going to have a log on to Azure portal, post which you can click on this Cloud Shell button. If this is the first time you're going to access the Cloud Shell, it asks you to create a storage account. We are going to go ahead with the default configuration. It will create a storage account for me where my profile will be created. If I'm going to store some files which I'm planning to use into my future deployments, I will be having that storage space created right now. Once the storage space is created, you will be able to access Cloud Shell just with a simple click. Every time you access a Cloud Shell, it will not go and create a storage account. It will verify if you have an existing storage or not. If it finds an existing storage, it just allows you to go and get started. This is a command line management which is available to me. Using this command line management, I can go and do the resource access over the cloud, as well as I can go and execute the commands for creation of resources, modification of resources, or even I can go and delete my resources. There we have, this is the PowerShell prompt. Now I have a quick document to let you know how the PowerShell and Bash are different from each other. I'm going to access that. And this is how you can go and easily identify the difference between the two commands types. So I do have a PowerShell, which is very similar to the traditional PowerShell tool we have been using on the Windows operating system. You can click over it and you can change it to Bash prompt as well. Now, when I say you can go and change it to Bash prompt, you will be able to execute the Bash scripting language based command, which is definitely based on the C programming language. So the syntax of the commands on PowerShell and Bash is different. I can go and show you a quick demonstration of how these commands are actually getting executed. So for example, you want to create a resource group. A resource group is a container for Azure resources. Whenever you plan to deploy any resource on Azure environment, you need to create a container for that. If you are planning to create a application infrastructure over cloud, for that application infrastructure, you may have a storage account, you may require a database, you may require some web servers, maybe a container or a Kubernetes. So you can plan to create a resource group which can hold all these resources logically together. And later, this resource group can be used for permission management. This resource group can be used for governance and compliance. You have all those benefits coming in. And we are going to discuss it more in the upcoming topics. But in case you want to go and do the creation of a resource group in GUI, you are going to execute it right from here. You can go to resource groups. I have few of these resource group created, but I'll show you how the resource groups are created in GUI. I'm going to create a demo resource group for Masterclass, and I'll call it portal-based resource group. You have to define which region you are planning to create this resource group. You can add some key value pair information like this is demo first. This is created by user Ranjeet. I can add these key value pair, which helps me to identify these resources later on. I can go and navigate. I can filter my resources based on these key values I'm adding. I can go and create a resource group like this. This deployment, which you have seen in GUI, okay, I created a demo masterclass portal. Here we are. This resource group can be created using the command line interfaces as well. I can go and execute it over the PowerShell by using the command. And I'm going to call it demo resource group Cloud Shell. Now the command, how the PowerShells are being created, you have a verb, new, you have a noun, and then the name of the resource group and the location where you want to go and add it. If you want, you can go and put the tags information also. You simply take this command and execute it here. Enter. And this way, you can go and get your first resource group created on the cloud services. Now, I have just shown you how the PowerShell executions can be done. In case you want to have a bash based command execution, then you can simply switch to bash. Once this has been done, you have to run a bash command, and you can see the difference between the syntax of the two commands. PowerShell is based on verb, noun, and then the parameters, whereas on the bash, it is the noun and then the verb. And the verb is not new, the verb is create, to go and create something over the portal. I can go and call it demo cloud shell bash. I can take this command and execute it right over here. The result is I'm creating a resource group. I have created it in the GUI, and now I have successfully created this resource group in the PowerShell and Cloud Shell. And if you do a quick refresh, you'll be able to see all these resource group created right over here. So these are the different methods through which you can go and interact with Azure. You can go and use mobile app. You can use ARM template. I have a quick ARM template as well. If I want to do the same task, which I have shown you over the GUI and commandlet, if I want to go and execute the same task using a ARM template, this is how I am going to create my JSON file. This is a JavaScript object notation file. I can go and define the resource group name. I can define the resource group location. Along with that, into this ARM template, I'm also creating a storage account. I'm also creating one resource, which is a storage account. So I can go and define everything into this infrastructure as a code deployment. I can now take this into my portal and I can execute into my Azure environment. I'll copy this and then I can go and deploy. This is the place from where you can go and use infrastructure as a code option. You can go and build your own template. You can paste your template here and boom, you are able to create a resource group and a storage account using infrastructure as a service. You save this and now you can mention what is your resource group name, what is your resource group location. I'll call it demo rg ARM templates. You can put the location as per your governance and compliance. I'm going to put it in East US. I have been deploying the previous resource group in West US. And this time, the storage account, I'm going to use a unique name. So I'm going to add some numbers to it. And then you can go and get the resource group and the resource deployment with the ARM template, which is an execution type as infrastructure as a code. There are many other methods of interacting with Azure as well, but we are just going to have a quick introduction to the tools which can be consumed into the Azure environment. So I have shown you the examples of Portal, Cloud Shell, PowerShell, as well as how the ARM templates can be consumed inside the business. Now, these are the tools which can be used to manage the Azure resources. And this was the quick demo for the resource which has been created into the execution of deployments. So here we are. You can see the resource deployment have been started. Let's go and check out. Hey, we have successfully completed the deployment. If you want to see your template which you have used, you can see it here. If you want to go and see the actual resource group, this is a resource group with ARM template. Let's do a refresh. Here we are, demo RG ARM template. You'll click over it and you'll find a storage account also being created for you. Of course, with a prefix to make it globally unique. And we are going to have more discussion about the storage services in the later section of this masterclass. So I hope you enjoyed this quick demo and you got to know how you can get started with Azure Service Management. The second part into this session we are going to look at is how you can go and get started with identity management solution. Now, what is this identity management solution? The identity management is being done with the help of Azure Active Directory, which is a cloud-based identity and access management services. It provides you application management capabilities where you can go and manage your cloud or on-premise apps using the application proxy, single sign-on. You have the My App portal where user can go and look at the applications which have been assigned to them. You can go and publish software as a service apps into the app management capabilities as well. Using the Azure Active Directory, you can go and provide a self-service password reset option to their identities. You can go and provide multi-factor authentication. You can create a lockout policy for the users. You are in full control of identities being used for the business. Now, if you are a IT admin, you can use the Azure Active Directory to control the access to the resources and the applications which are used in the business. If you are a developer, you are still accessing the Azure Active Directory for the identity management solution for your custom applications. You can go and use it for your apps to have single sign-on capabilities for the users. If you are working with Microsoft 365, if you're working with Office 365, Azure, Dynamics CRM, all these portals, all these services offered from cloud, from Microsoft Cloud, are being managed with the help of Azure Active Directory. So in the background, whenever you are creating users, whenever you are managing identities, in the background of all these cloud offering from Microsoft, Azure Active Directory tenant is created. And one of the easiest way to go and get yourself started on Azure Active Directory is to go and create users and groups. That's what we have been traditionally using into the local Active Directory as well. So in the same way, you create a user or a group account into local Active Directory, and then you can put users in the group. You can use the inheritance of the group to assign permission over the resources. The same can be done over the Azure Active Directory as well. The difference would be when you are working with local Active Directory, you have a hierarchy which you can go and manage for the resources. You can go and start with the domain, and then you can go and create OUs. Then inside the OUs, you can put your users. You have a child domain concept. You have a concept of forest and trees, which we have been traditionally working into the local Active Directory environment. When you go to the cloud have a flat structure of Azure Active Directory. There are no organizational unit, there are no GPUs which are available with Azure Active Directory, but to have a similar feature set, you can go and use Azure Active Directory domain services. That's again one of the offering over the cloud service. Now, managing users both on-premise and cloud poses a lot of challenging scenarios for the organization. The Microsoft Identity solution, which is available in form of Active Directory for the on-premises and Azure Active Directory for the cloud, helps to manage the hybrid capabilities or the hybrid identity requirement for the business as well. Now, when you go and get started with Azure Active Directory, you are going to have a free version. So there are multiple offerings in terms of SKUs for Azure Active Directory. Out of the box, it is a free version which is available to you. If you need additional features, if you need identity and governance for the identity management solution, you can switch from a free version to a Microsoft 365 to a P1 license or a P2 license. There are multiple SKUs which are available, which defines how the services are going to be available, what features will be activated for you on the basis of subscription you get for your users. Now, of course, you can go and do a quick demonstration for this as well, but this is a quick introduction of how you can manage your identities over cloud. That's the first one. You can go and create your identities on Azure Active Directory. Those are referred as the cloud identities. You can go and create identities for the business partners, which is a B2B offering of Azure, a business to business collaboration. If you want to have, you can create those identities which are coming from your partners and which are going to consume the resources available in your subscription. You can use the Azure Active Directory for B2C as well, the business to customer, where you have certain applications which are consumed by the customer of your business, and those identities can be managed in a separate instance or a separate tenant of Azure Active Directory, which is a B2C offering for the cloud. You can take your on-premise identities to the cloud as well, which are referred as hybrid identities. And there are many tools to go and help you into that process. So those organizations which have their on-premise footprint, planning to take their resources towards cloud, one of the primary objective is also to move their identities to the cloud. Which service they can go and use for that purpose is a Azure Active Directory on cloud, which is going to sync back to the local Active Directory. We have tools. The AAD Connect tool is there. The Cloud Sync agents can be deployed, using which a hybrid identity can be managed for the business. So you can go and use all these features while you get started with Azure Active Directory. Now, if we look at how this actually looks on the portal, we have this portal logged in. The ID with which I have logged in, December 11 Ranjeet at the rate outlook.com. This is the ID which is having a global administrator privilege. This is the ID through which I have actually taken a subscription from Microsoft. So if you look at the Azure Active Directory feature, now you can find it right from the portal menu, or you can search for it. Azure Active Directory. It works both ways. So I can go and click on this Azure Active Directory. As soon as you get started with any of the services, any of the Microsoft services, Azure, Microsoft 365, Dynamics CRM, you're going to have one tenant which have been assigned to you. There is a default directory which has been created and which is made available. And this default directory comes with a suffix of on Microsoft.com. So the user with which the subscription have been taken added with a suffix of on Microsoft.com creates a default directory for you. Using this default directory, you are having a capability of managing identities into the environment. I can click on users and you can find a list of users which are either created into my cloud. So you can see these identities. When you find this into my default directories, these are cloud identities. Whereas I do have a user account which have this invitation being mapped, creation type as invitation. So this is a guest user account which is part of my B2B offering, where I can go and ask someone who is outside my organization. I may have some partner organization to help me into the deployment of services, management of resources, creation of new solution for the organization, and to provide them a role, to provide them the permissions to access the resources. They can use the identity. I can now manage this identity into my local Active Directory and assign privileges, assign permissions, authorization to the user to access resource. How do we start with this? You go and click on new user, and here we have the option of create new user. Invite external user is this invitation user type, and create new user where you can get started with the user creation. I can go and say I want to create a new user, Robert. Okay, here we are. This will be the principal name with a default directory associated to it. I can define a display name, I can give a password, and then the account can be created with the enabled status or with the disabled status. You can go and enable it whenever the business requirement arises. You can go and define the properties for the user. All of those attributes which you have seen into your local environment, you find them over the cloud services as well. Later, you can go and give roles to the user. You can go and assign the users to the group. This is very common scenario of assigning identities with the required permission to enable them perform their duties, perform their role for the organization. So you can go and do these role or group assignation, and then you can go and create the user identity. I have these users already created. You can find it here, John and Adam. Now, these are the users which have been created into my Active Directory. You can see their names as well. And this is the user through which I have actually created my Azure subscription. This is my external user. This is a guest user who have been sent a invitation to go and collaborate. You have two options. You can go and create these invited users from here. You have to give the email address. Now, once you send an email, or once you create this user account, it is going to send an email notification to the user. I'm going to show you how does it looks like. So I have logged in with that user. This is Feb 24th user. As a response of creating this user account, you get this Microsoft invitation on behalf of default Active Directory. You get the details. This is the organization's default Active Directory. This is the domain name. And then the external user have to accept this invitation. Once he accepts this invitation, he'll be able to log on into the portal. Now, of course, you can go and assign some applications to the user, to the external user, or you can assign privileges over portal based resources. So if I'll go to portal.azure.com, you can find that this user is currently using a directory which is coming from here. Now, if the user have been assigned any privileges, he will be able to access those resources. Let's see if I can see any resource. Hey, I can access some resources. Is it like I can go and see all the resources which are available on this subscription? Let's check out. If I'll see the list of all resources here, I have 15. Okay, this was resource group. I'll go to resources to get the list. How many resources I have? I have 11 resources available in the subscription, whereas the guest user is able to see only 6. How is this possible? This is possible because I am using a access control with Azure Active Directory. I have only assigned a specific resource group access to this user. And if you look at this, I'll go to my resource group, the resource group where I have these resources. And there in the IAM, you can find the role assignment. And in the role assignment, you can find this user who have been provided the owner privileges for the resource group. And because of this assignation, which I can go and do right now as well for any other user as also, once this assignation is done, the user is able to access the resource with the permissions, with the role assigned to him. So this owner role have its own permissions. You can go and look at what are the privileges available for the owners. Grant full access to manage all resources, including the ability of assigning roles in Azure. You can see their permissions as well. So there is an external user to whom I have assigned the permissions, and the external user can actually access the resources based on the role assigned to him. Along with this, Azure Active Directory do provide you a lot of other features. Like if you want to go and change your licensing, if you are started with the free license and you want to move to the P1 and P2 license because you want to go and take those features, you want to go and enable those identity governance and compliance feature for the users, you can go and do that from the licenses tab. Right now, for this subscription, I already activated a P2 trial license. As part of Azure free trial, you can actually go and experience the P2 features into Azure Active Directory. You can go and click try and buy, and you can use the P2 free trial activation. I already did it. And because of this, I'm now able to see all advanced identity, compliance, governance, management, protection features into my Azure Active Directory. I can use conditional access. I can go and use access reviews. I can go and use identity governance. All these features you can go and look at here. There we are. I do have identity governance. I do have privileged identity management. These are the features which are not available in the free subscription of Azure Active Directory. Because of this activation, I can go and use the identity governance feature. I can go and use conditional access. I can use privileged identity management. These are the features which are enabled based on what is your business requirement. So using Azure Active Directory, you are able to get the authentication and authorization enabled with the role-based access control. We do have those role-based access control available at the tenant level, which is for the Azure Active Directory. I'll give you a quick view for that. If you go back to, okay, not this user, there we are. You have some out of box roles which are available. These roles are available at the Azure Active Directory tenant level. These are role-based access control, and currently my user, the user with whom I have logged in, I am a global administrator for this tenant. I can go and use other roles. I have billing administrator, user administrator, exchange administrator, domain administrator, hybrid, group, global readers, service management, license management. I can assign these roles to the users, and in turn, they will be able to manage the services at the Azure Active Directory level. The second role-based access control, which we are going to look into, identity governance feature, is at the resource level. So you can select a virtual machine, you can select a database, you can select a storage account, you can select a Kubernetes service, and then you can also go and give authorization to the user to access that resource. That specific resource can be allowed to be accessed by the user. That's also referred as role-based access control, but that is on Azure resource, not on the Active Directory tenant. These are tenant level roles. So this is a quick information about how the identities can be managed into the Azure environment. We did a quick demonstration of how to go and create users, how you can go and invite the external users, how you can change the licenses, how you can get the free trial to go and get the experience of Azure Active Directory management, how you can go and use the external identity to define permissions for collaboration with the partner's identity. Okay, I hope you are enjoying this session, and now we are moving towards the next agenda item. That is about the governance and compliance feature which is available. Now, into this governance and compliance, we are going to talk about only specific features which I have highlighted as your policies, resource lock, role-based access control. There are other features as well. But because this is just a master class to give you an introduction to what Azure administrator capabilities are, we are going to limit our discussion to some of the major features into a service category. So what is governance? Let's start from there. Why it is important. I hope some of you may be part of the governance team in your organization, or at least you may have heard about what governance the organization is following. So governance is actually a framework that determines how the organization conduct their business activities, how they are going to get to the business objectives, and what will be the responsibilities, what will be the accountability for different teams and users and roles in the organization. Azure governance combines different services and capabilities for managing all your Azure resources at scale and following the control guidelines. So by using the governance and compliance feature of Azure, you are able to take control of the resources which are getting deployed into the environment, and the properties, the features which are offered on those resources. You can take control of that into the governance and compliance. One of the primary feature which we use for that is Azure policy. So we know that the most of the businesses who are going to use the Azure platform is because of the flexibility which is being provided by the cloud services, is because of the agility which has been offered. What that agility is, which allows the developers to build, manage, update, delete their resources as they need, but unwanted access to the resource, on the other hand, can result into the the unintended cost. It can go and give you some surprises into the billing. So we want that the feature of agility should be there. The people should have a delegation so that they can go and deploy the resources, manage their resources, can go and do some innovation using the scalability, using the elasticity of the cloud services. Along with that, we want to make sure that any deployment which happens into the cloud environment is as per the governance and compliance requirement of the business. And for that, we have created a management infrastructure for the resources. Using this management infrastructure, I am able to maintain the governance and compliance over multiple subscription, over multiple resource groups which have been created, and using the identities, using the role-based access control, policies, management group gives me these features to control the compliance over the deployment of public cloud. So what is this management infrastructure? Think of, you have resources which you are planning to deploy over the Azure. If you're going to deploy all these resources in a flat structure, it will be very difficult for the organization to manage the resources, to manage the permissions, to manage the delegation for the resources to a specific team, and then making sure that there is an inheritance, there is a control over the permission to access a resource, to use the resource, to manage a specific set of resources will not be possible if it would be a flat structure and you have hundreds of such resources. Of course, you can go and do that, but it would be very difficult. It will be a nightmare for the administrator to manage it in a flat structure. So using this management infrastructure, we are able to create a logical hierarchy for the resources which you are planning to deploy over the cloud, putting them into the resource groups. These resource group can be part of a subscription, and subscription can be added to the management group. Having this structure allows the organization to get a management hierarchy being built. Later, you can go and use these management options in as a scope in defining Azure policies. And policies allow you to take control of the resources which you are planning to deploy with the properties available for the resources can also be managed. You can go and define what will be the type of virtual machine which can be deployed, which location the resource can be deployed. If I'm deploying a virtual machine, will it have an encrypted disk? I can go and make it mandatory for the users. I can go and put the security features for databases. So if the user or the developer is not creating the resource as per the governance and compliance framework, I can go and flag it that it is non-compliant. Or I can go and say, hey, make sure that if the resource is non-compliant, it should not go and get deployed into the portal. You can go and perform all those actions using Azure policies. You can go and lock your resources so that no further changes are allowed. So there are two types of lock. You can go and make your resources read only, making sure that no further changes can be applied, or you can go and put a lock of delete, do not delete. So of course the lock will not be to delete. The lock is do not delete, where the resources can be updated, the resources can be deployed, but the resource cannot be deleted. You can lock your resource like that. So I've taken a simple example. For the business scenario, you may have management groups created. What is these management group? These management group allows you to go and put multiple subscription into a hierarchical space, where later on you can go and define your policies, you can define the roles, you can define the permissions, the authentication, authorization for the users. So taking an example that a business have multiple geographies, and into these geographies they have multiple environment, and for those environment they have purchased different subscriptions. Into these subscriptions the resource groups are created, and this is actually a hierarchy which you can see in Azure environment. Once this hierarchy is there, you can go and put your governance and compliance in place using Azure policies, Azure blueprint, resource lock, role-based access control. Tags can also be part of your governance and compliance requirement, so that it's easier for you to go and apply certain policies or to filter and navigate your resources. You can use tagging features also. So subscription is a management and billing unit. You buy a subscription. In that subscription, you can go and create resource group. As I have shown you into my first demo, you can create a resource group as a logical container. And in that logical container, then you can go and start deploying resources. These subscription, because of the scale of the business, may be multiple subscription with the organization, and to organize these subscription you can use management groups. The hierarchy of management group starts from the root management group. We call it root management group. And then you can proceed with management group, subscription, resource group. And then these resource group contain the actual resource, virtual machine, storage account, networks, security, firewall. You can go and put your resources in these resource groups. Now, with this discussion of managing the governance and compliance, let's go and do a quick demo. Let's go and look into the portal, how these features look like. So when you go back to the portal, the first thing which we need to understand is the management infrastructure we were talking about. This management infrastructure starts from something referred as management group. Now, of course, if you want to get started with management group, you have to create it. In this subscription, I have already created that for my demonstration. Okay, but when you go for a full-fledged admin course, we go and do it from scratch. Right now, I'm just demonstrating a pre-created environment to you. So I have this management group capability. And for the sake of example, I have taken this management group. Here is my tenant root group. Into this tenant root group, I have created Netcom Learning as one of the management group. And I have my subscription, which is right now in tenant root group. Now, for the sake of governance and compliance, okay, I am going to create some policies. I am going to create some access controls. And I want that these access controls should be applied to the subscription. Now, if I have multiple subscription, in this case, I have only one, but if I have multiple subscription, I can go and group my subscription in the management group hierarchy. You can go and create another management group, and I'm going to call it Netcom Consultancy Business, for example. I'll take that as the same display name, and I can go and create these management group. Of course, you need the permissions to go and build it. The role-based access control, I have already created that for my account. Now, the result is I'm able to create a hierarchy for management groups. Let's see. Hey, here we are. Now, definitely, what policies, what roles, what type of control you require in consultancy business will be different from the learning. And that's what I'm doing it. By using these management group, I'm able to create that structure where I can go and take control of my governance and compliance. Now imagine this subscription which I have purchased. This is for learning business. This is not for the consultancy. Right now it is mapped to my root management group. But what I can do is I can go to my learning management group and I can move the subscription from the root management group to the learning management group. I'm building this hierarchy, which I have shown you over the slide. I'm building this hierarchy. Now, my subscription is mapped to this management group. And this can be used as a scope for governance and compliance. Thereby, I'm having more granular control for my compliance in the business. If you go back, this is how your hierarchy is going to look like. Do a refresh. Now, don't look at this. Make sure you do a refresh and your changes will be reflected here. If you have more subscription, of course, you can go and buy the subscriptions as well. There are many different subscription types available. If you want to see a quick list of different types of subscription, you can go to your subscription. Here we are, subscriptions, and just get a list of different types of subscriptions available for Azure. Currently, I'm using a free trial subscription, but that's not the only way you can have a relationship with Microsoft. Okay, you can have pay as you go. You can have a student license. You can have Azure sponsorship, Visual Studio, Open Azure, student starter, developer sponsorship, standard. All these are different type of subscription. If you want to get a list of all the subscription, you get that here. This is the full list of Azure subscription types. And you can get the details of any type of subscription. Like I'm using free trial right now. If I'll click on free trial, I'll get the information about what this free trial is all about and what is included and excluded into this free trial subscription. So you can go and get multiple subscription. Once you have multiple subscription into your environment, you can go and put these subscription as per your business requirement into different management groups. Once these management groups are in place, once you have this hierarchy been built up, you can go and use features like policy. What these policies do? The policies allow me to go and take control of resources. So if you go to policy definitions, you can actually see a list of policy and initiative. Initiatives are group of policies. You can see here, I have initiative, which is a group of policies being available for all international standards like HIPAA, PCI, ISO compliance, GDPR compliance. You will have initiatives because they contain multiple policies inside it. If you want to see individual policy, you just go and filter policies, and then you can look out for which service you want to take control of. On the basis of the service selection, your policies will get filtered out. So I'm looking out for compute based policies. Okay, for compute, we have all these policies which gives you more control to manage the compliance status for compute resources. You can audit the virtual machines. You can go and say, do not use the management disk. You audit the management disk being used into the virtual machines, require the automatic OS patching, the default IES configuration, the managed disk should be disabled for public access. So these are built-in policies which are made available to you. Of course, you have the capability of creating your own custom policies as well. If this is not something which you are looking for, you have a very custom requirement based on your own organizational type, you can go and build your own policies. Policy is nothing else but a file, a JSON file, which defines the properties you want to take control of. Now in my environment, I have a policy which is already active. So if I'll go to assignments, you will see I have used a policy called allowed location. And I have applied this to free trial, which is my subscription. And in the free trial, I have a resource group. Now, of course, this is what is referred as scope. If you are planning to assign a policy, this is the important segment. This is where your management infrastructure is going to play its role. If you have a global requirement, you apply it at tenant group. If you have a specific requirement for consultancy business or learning business, you can select it. In learning, you have one subscription available. In that subscription, you have multiple resource group. You can be very granular in applying a policy to the resource into that management hierarchy. The policy which I have currently deployed limits the location which a user can use to deploy resources. So out of these resource groups which you are looking at, the resource group called RG Demo Azure Policy. This is the resource group where I have mentioned that only East US can be used for the deployment of resource. Let's go and find out when my governance and compliance is active, what happens. So I'm planning to deploy, let's say, I'm planning to deploy a network. Which network? Of course, it is going to be a virtual network. I'm planning to deploy a virtual network. And if I'm deploying this virtual network in RG demo Azure policy, where I have controls in terms of governance and compliance. If I use this and I use any other location, say for example, Japan East, I'll give a name and then I'll just go with the default one. Okay, I'll just go and add a random number to it, making it unique. And I'll go with the default configuration. I'm not going to change security, IP tags, nothing. I'll just go and say, just go and deploy this resource. And when I go and say, review this resource, I'm expecting an error because I'm using Japan East and my governance policy says, ooh, validation failed. Why? The validation is failed because the policy do not allow this resource to be created. Which policy? The allowed location policy. Now, if you want to see what that allowed location policy is, you can click over it and you will see that only East US is the region where I have allowed my deployment. So if I'll just change it to East US, the same resource where I was getting an error, if I'll go and now verify this resource deployment, it will not have any error. It will allow me to create the resource. This is what the governance and compliance service helps you with. There are many other features which we can go and discuss, but with the limitation of time, we are just going to look at some specific features. And the feature which we have looked into governance and compliance is policies. So this is how you can go and take control of your resources using a management infrastructure hierarchy and then applying the policy to take control of resource and their properties which are going to be deployed in this hierarchy. I hope you are enjoying this session till now. We are going to take a break here. We have covered identities, we have covered governance, we have covered tools. We'll take a break here, a quick 5-minute break. We'll resume the session after this and we'll go ahead with the remaining topics for the day. This is our agenda. So we covered tools, identities, governance. Post break, we'll look at network services, virtual machine, and storage. Enjoy your break and see you in 5 minutes.
Sure, we are now going to take a 5-minute break, but before we do that, we are going to launch a quick poll that we want to invite you to participate in. Doing so helps us know how we can better serve you by telling us who might be interested in more information or in taking some additional training. In addition, we have a lot more informative webinars coming up, so please go to netcomlearning.com/webinars in order to register.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. After the break, we have completed the tools through which you can go and interact with Azure. We discussed about the identity management feature available on Azure, which is Azure Active Directory, and we discussed about how you can go and take the governance and compliance into the Azure deployments, how you can go and use the features like Azure policy to help you into the management of governance and compliance for the business. Now, what we are looking at is the network services being available from cloud. Here we are. So network plays an important role for any cloud service, or even if you are working into your on-prem environment. The network service allows you to first allow the communication between the computers, between the nodes. Secondly, allows you to go and put filters or do the screening of the traffic. You can go and protect your resources. You can protect your networks using firewall, using DDoS protection, IDS, IPS solution. Now, think of you are making a move from your on-prem to the cloud, or you are creating a new resource, a new application stack on cloud. And for that application, you may have a blend of multiple services. You may have your front end, you may have app tier, then data tier, databases, something like that, a multi-tier application. And when you have these multi-tier application, you want the communication to happen between these resources. So you may have some virtual machines, you may have a storage account, a database service, some containers running for you. You may have an app service being deployed, which is a offering from platform as a service category. In all those solutions which are getting deployed, network is one of the important aspect. So these virtual network represents your network in the cloud. Just like you have been experiencing the network services on-prem, you have a very similar setup on the cloud. And this network allows you to take control of the routing. This network helps you to take control of security and also to provide isolation and segmentation into the network. So the same way you go and create subnets into your environment, and then you can go and put some security over the subnet communication, we can go and perform the similar task into the Azure environment as well with the help of the tools available in the network services. Now, with the deployment happening over the cloud and some of the resources still remaining on-prem, you may end up into a situation called hybrid cloud setups. A hybrid cloud is where some of your resources resides in your private cloud into your own company cloud, and some of your services or application have moved to the cloud. And that becomes your extended setup where you need to have a communication, you need to secure that communication, you need to route the traffic, and you need to make sure that if there is single sign on, if there is authentication requirement, authorization, you are able to handle such request for the application as well. So allowing this hybrid infrastructure also needs you to understand one of the foundation service referred as network. Now, when you are working with these hybrid setup, you can go and use a VPN based connectivity, or you can use a express route connectivity. VPN is like you can go and use any internet connection to make a communication from your on-prem to the cloud or from your site to the cloud services. You can go and opt for any internet connection. You just use a software defined private network being created over these internet connection. So there are VPN tunnels which get created. IPsec is of course the way we go and protect our traffic over it. Or you can go and take a express route provider connection, which is a dedicated connection, allows you to have a dedicated bandwidth. So in case you are working with some latency sensitive application, You need high bandwidth, low latency. You need a dedicated network channel being created from your on-prem to the cloud services, which is not going to be shared by any other uh, tenant, any other customer. Then you can go and opt for express routes, which are dedicated connections provided by express route providers. So you have to look out for who is the affiliated express route provider into your region to take this hybrid connectivity. Also, over the cloud itself, there is a possibility that you have created multiple virtual networks. And down the line, after a few years or few months of your operation over the cloud, your team may require a connectivity between these virtual networks also. If that's the case, Microsoft offers you virtual network peering configuration. Using this peering, you can seamlessly connect two Azure networks, and I'm going to make it bold, two Azure networks. So when you are in Azure, you can go and use peering to connect Azure networks together. It can be in one resource group. It can be in multiple resource group, the networks. It can be in one subscription. It can be in multiple subscriptions as well. Even a virtual network can be in two different regions, two different geographical regions. We do not have limits which says that the two different geographical regions cannot have peering, or two virtual networks in different subscription cannot be paired. You can go and do the peering till the time you are on Azure virtual networks. Using these virtual networks, it allows you the peering of virtual network. It allows you to have no public internet gateway. Any encryption is not required. You can go and use the Microsoft backbone network to make a communication happen between Azure hosted networks. Now, of course, along with the connectivity, now these three services, the VPN, Express Route, peering, are all about how you can go and do a site to site connection. And these site can be within Azure, or this site can be Azure on-prem. It can also be Azure to other cloud services, because that's one of the very common scenario which you will find. If you move to cloud, if you get to know about your own organizational structure, there is a fair possibility that your company is having a multi-cloud setup. Your organization is working with multiple cloud service provider, and in that case, you also need networks to make a communication between two different service providers. Maybe my company is using Azure and AWS. Your company is using Azure, AWS, GCP. And because of the business requirement, we need to make sure that these applications can communicate to each other. Network service is the resource which allows you to have that cross cloud connectivity. Network service is the backbone to allow you for a hybrid setups as well. Now, along with this connectivity method, Azure Network takes one more responsibility, which is about the load balancing. When you are planning to deploy an enterprise specific application, when you are planning to go and take a business critical application to the cloud, there are chances that you're not going to deploy it on one single virtual machine. You're going to have multiple resources. It may be multiple web apps which you are going to create. If you're using platform as a service, if you're using infrastructure as a service, there will be multiple VMs you are going to deploy. And in that case, you need a load balancing service. The load balancing service, which first enables you to balance the load as the name suggests. So we have Azure load balancers which can be used. You can use app gateways, you have front doors, you have traffic manager. There are many services. When I say many, there are 4 services which can be used to go and do the load balancing. Now, along with this load balancing, they also provide you high availability. So you are not having a single point of failure for your application. If one of the node is down, one of the services down, your load balancer can detect the health status of the backend pool resources, and it can actually switch the traffic to the healthy nodes. It can be a VM, it can be an app service, it can be a container. All these services do use load balancing. So to maintain your availability and scalability, you do have the network traffic distribution service available, which comes in the form of load balancing. Now, one of the important aspect is also to go and take ownership of how my networks are going to move data. And this can be done with the help of Azure route tables. Azure route table is a feature which allows you to create a user defined routes. We call it UDR. By creating these UDR, you are able to define how the traffic will move from one subnet to another subnet. You want to take a perimeter network based topology. You have deployed a firewall, you want all your traffic to move through that firewall, and the firewall will take a decision to allow or deny a traffic. You have a virtual appliance being deployed for monitoring of network traffic. You want that virtual appliance to be a hop for the communication happening between the two virtual networks. All these are the scenarios where Azure routes can be consumed, Azure route services can be consumed for the business. So these are some of the main services available on network. Now, just to give you a bit of background, in AZ-104, we have 3 dedicated modules for network. So what you are looking at the slide is just the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot of configuration around network and its related services in terms of inter-site communication, in terms of load balancing capabilities, in terms of securing the networks. Even we have a dedicated training for Azure network services only. So Microsoft understands the capability and the requirement of network specialization. And for that, there are role-based modules which have been created for the sake of learning and understanding the network capabilities. Now, let's go and have a quick look to this network service. Where do you start with? The start comes with a virtual network creation. Okay, you go to the virtual network category, you can see that I have these virtual networks already running for me. I can go and create a virtual network like this, where you have to define which resource group you want to place this network to. You have to give a name. Now, obviously, the naming convention is something which is very important for the organization. So I'll say this is VNet for app A and used for prod environment, something like this, which every organization have a naming scheme. So you are going to use that naming scheme. You will define the region, and this takes an important configuration, because if you are going to put it into a East US region, then the VMs, the virtual machines which you are planning to deploy, they need to be in the same region. If you deploy this network in Norway, then the East US VM cannot be connected to this network. That's an important consideration. So network is a regional service. I'm going to revert it back to my East US. Now, of course, you can go and define security, including the bastion services to securely connect RDP and SSH. You can go and use the firewall integration. You can go and enable the DDoS protection. That's all about network security, which can be enabled right now during the deployment of network, or you can integrate it later. The next is, of course, if you're creating a network, it needs to have an IP address range. And this is where you define your IP addresses and subnets, post which You are able to add some tags based on your business requirements, and you complete this network deployment. Now, once you complete this network deployment, this is how it looks like. You have all the details available into this overview. You have been using this address space, you are using the DNS services, you do have this subscription, you have the tags, you have the subnets being created, and I have consumed this network as well. So if I'll go to connected devices, you can see there is a virtual machine which has been placed, and the virtual machine have taken an IP address from the subnet range. The subnet range is 10.1.0.0, and the device have taken 10.1.0.4. So IP address have been taken from the resource which is currently deployed into my environment. By the way, I'm going to start this virtual machine because it is in a turn off state. You can see it. This is the virtual machine which is deployed into that network. I'm going to start this for my next demo. So here we are. When you go and deploy virtual machines, a virtual machine have a requirement, a mandatory requirement to have private IP address. The public IP addresses are optional. If you want to have, great. If you don't want, you can just leave it. But private IPs are necessary. It's mandatory. And for private IP address, you need a virtual network setup. So you create a virtual network, and once the virtual network is there, while deploying your virtual machines, you can go and use this network if your virtual machine is in East US. If your virtual machine is deployed somewhere else, then you can't go and use this network service. So this is a simple use case of a virtual network. We also talked about peering, and I want to show you how simple it is to go and do the peering between the two virtual networks. So I'll go to virtual network A, which is in site A, and this is site B. I have put it in East US, but as we discussed, virtual networks can be in any region. It can be in any geography around the globe, and you can go and do the peering between the two networks. How you do achieve peering? You go to the virtual network and you have this peering option in the settings blade. You go to peering and you select which network do you want to pair. I'll say I want to pair site A to site B. You just need to give a name so that you know and you remember for what this peering was created. And in the same window, you have to create a connection from site B to site A. So I'll call it site B to site A. So you have given two names, one from site A to site B, unidirectional, and then site B to site A. And the last thing which you need to do for peering is select which network you want to connect. Now, this is how we call it a seamless, easy to go and do configuration. You select network B and you click add. Of course, you have many options to go and take more control into the peering, but this is how the peering is being done. Now, any device which would be in site A, once this peering status goes to connected, the devices in site A, the services in site A would be able to connect to site B. Just two names and the network selection. Of course, it is in my own subscription. If it is not, then I have to give us network ID. I have to pass that as a parameter into my command to go and use another network from a different subscription to go and do the peering. The only condition is the network should be on Azure. And here you can see the two networks are connected. This is what peering services is all about. So when you do connect with the Azure service and you are working with the network capabilities, You have peering, you have VPN, you have express route, allows you for hybrid connectivity and managing your multi-cloud setups. You do have load balancing, you do have UDRs. These are all the capabilities of network service to go and get started with. So we did a quick demo for the same. Now let's talk about the virtual machines. Now, of course, this virtual machine goes into the category of compute services offered over cloud. And virtual machines specifically is part of infrastructure as a service model. Why we are calling it infrastructure as a service model? Because when you go and deploy a virtual machine, you are able to define its size, the software you want to use, the network it will go to, the security, the installation of agents. You can go and take control of all of these configuration. So what Microsoft is providing you, Microsoft is only providing you the data center services. Microsoft is managing infrastructure for you, the physical network, the physical server, and the physical data centers. And of course, the virtualization layer, which enables you to go and get started with virtual machines. So only these three layers are managed by Microsoft. On top of that, when you go and create a virtual machine, you define the network to which it is going to connect to, how many disks you want to have, which type of disk, which operating system, which port number you want to enable, which public IP do you want to use or not. You can go and define which management you want to go and configure, like shutdown, startup, I making a identity associated with this so that role based access control can be assigned to those identities. Managed identities can be enabled. You can go and define uh, the extension, the tools, the agents which you want to deploy for the management of the VM or for the management of the services deployed inside the VM. You take care of all of that. Even you have a control that Microsoft should not patch my device, I'll go and do the patch management. So virtual machine is one of the more popular services into infrastructure as a service model because it provide a lot of flexibility to the users, to the administrators to deploy the services, take more control. Even virtual machine is one of the target for migration projects as well. So if you have a lot of virtual machine into your on-prem environment and you're looking for a lift and shift migration scenarios where you want to take all your virtual machine from on-prem, put it over the cloud, the virtual machine service is a target location in that case. And by having this virtual machine configuration available over the cloud, Azure says, in case you want to have a governance and compliance requirement to have a dedicated host available to you, because out of the box, when I go and create a virtual machine, what is going to happen? The underlying host, the underlying physical devices are managed by Microsoft. But due to a governance and compliance requirement, if you want to have your own host created on the cloud environment, then you can go and use the service of Azure dedicated host. You can create your own host, you can reserve your host in Microsoft data center, and then you can go and deploy your virtual machine over these dedicated hosts. So either you use Microsoft data center, that is the shared infrastructure, or you can go and use a dedicated host. Now, as we already discussed, the responsibility associated with the configuration and management is being shared between you and Microsoft. And of course, you take more responsibilities than Microsoft. That means you are having more flexibility in doing the configuration of the virtual machine as compared to platform as a service offering, like app services, or if you're working with software as a service. Infrastructure as a service is going to provide you the maximum flexibility, but it comes with maximum responsibilities as well. Now, For any service which has been used on cloud, scalability is an important aspect for its adoption by the customer. Is my service scalable? And in which format the service should be scalable? I should have a scalability in form of increasing the size of my resource or adding more instances of the same service. Virtual machine gives you both of these capabilities. You can change the size of your virtual machine, or you can add more instances of the virtual machine automatically using the service called virtual machine scale set. So you have possibilities of vertical scaling as well as horizontal scaling in the cloud environment. Now, having said that, and making sure that I highlighted it properly to you, the responsibility comes to you in terms of infrastructure as a service. So planning the virtual machine is very critical in terms of predicting its cost as well as predicting the performance and the security for the virtual machines also. Microsoft helps you a lot by providing you the images. So you can go and use operating system images as a catalog available to you. You can go and say, hey, I want a Windows 2012 server. I want a Windows 10 machine. I want a Ubuntu machine. I want a Red Hat machine. You don't have to deploy these operating systems. Yes, of course, if you want, you can go and start from scratch, but Microsoft provides you a catalog of these images and different sizes of the virtual machine. If you are working with compute intensive resource, if you want to have a memory intensive deployment, if you want to use a storage intensive application, you have multiple sizes, multiple categories of virtual machine which you can go and consume based on your own application requirement. Let's go and look at how the service actually looks like. So I'll go to my portal and I'll make sure that I'm on this account, the global admin account, because other account do not have this privilege of deploying the virtual machine. In the search box, I'll search for virtual machine. I can go and create the virtual machine. Now, while you are creating the virtual machine, as we said, you are going to have maximum control as well as responsibility. You can see these tabs. I can take control of the resource group where I want to go and deploy my resource. I can give the name, the region, how I want to make it highly available within a data center, between multiple data centers, or I want to do a horizontal scaling using VM scale sets. I can go and define security. I can go and use images which are available as a catalog from the client operating system to server operating system. I have a lot of choices, and this is not the full list. You have to go to here, see all images, and you can find more images not only from Microsoft but also from other distributions. Along with that, you will define your administrator username. You will define the port numbers which you enable over this virtual machine. Now you can go and use this virtual machine to be accessed directly over the internet. In that case, you will open the RDP port with a public IP associated to it. Or you can say, hey, I want to go and host a web services over it. So you can go and enable these ports right now, or you can do it later as well. So all these configurations are pretty customized based on the most general uses pattern of virtual machine over the cloud services. But if you have not selected some of the options, you can go and do it later. You can define it. You can go and define the disk you want to have. You can go and attach it to a specific network. Now, of course, that depends on the availability of a region. If I'm going to deploy a virtual machine in East US region, the networks which will be reflected back to me will only be from the East US. But if I'm going to change my region from East US to France Central, you will see my network are gone because I do not have any trans central network deployed. Now I have to create a new network. So I can go and do network. I can go and define the management features of identity, automatic shutdown, backups. I can define the monitoring for the virtual machine. If you want to have extended monitoring, you can go and do it right now. You can enable the services later. You can go and add some scripts during the installation, during the deployment, not installation, because we are going to use the image. So the image is already having its own operating system. During the post deployment stage, when the virtual machine is created, if you want to go and add some agents, you can go and do it right from this. Then you can go and add tags and review and complete the virtual machine creation. Once the virtual machine is created, you see this interface. Now I have created this virtual machine with a public IP. So I do have this public IP available. This virtual machine have the size, and the size is pretty customized. Even with the existing deployment, if I find that after few months of uses, my virtual machine need more resources, I can go to the size. Currently, my virtual machine is using a 2-core 4 GB RAM configuration. I can move to 4-core 16 GB RAM. Click, and your size are increased. So you are doing this vertical scaling, and you have a lot of controls while creating the virtual machine, as well as for the deployed resource. You can go and manage all these parameters. Virtual machines, once deployed, gives you a capability of taking a RDP. Just acts like a physical device, but is a simulation. It's the emulation, not simulation. It's the emulation of a physical device over the virtual environment. I have this public IP. I'll go and download this RDP, and I can connect to the RDP of this. Of course, it's going to ask me the username and password. I'm going to add my username and password. It goes to my primary screen. Not to worry, I'm going to share my screen once I get inside the device. Okay, here we are. Now, because of the public IP, I can go and access it over the internet. And over this virtual machine, I have deployed a web server capability. I have deployed IIS over this virtual machine. The result is, because of that IIS which has been deployed, and I also enabled port number 80 over this device. You can see here, RDP is enabled and port 80 is also enabled over it. This server becomes a publicly accessible web server. So if I'll take this public IP and I'll try to open this public IP into another tab, you can actually see a website coming back from the server. This is the capability of Azure. While you are creating few resources over the cloud, you can easily make them accessible over the internet. The file which is getting displayed to me is coming from the C drive. Inetpub www.root, and this is the file which is getting displayed to me. So this is how the virtual machine can be deployed and can be managed by the use of policies. Governance and compliance can be enabled over this resource a lot. Also, because it do have a public IP connectivity, I can easily run the roles inside this virtual machine. I can make it a FTP server, I can make it a DNS server, I can go and make it a web server. And what all service are deployed here can be used directly over the internet. And of course, I do have the capability of securing these resources, securing these ports and services from the virtual machine. This is the core capability of a virtual machine as a service. Now, this is only few of those configuration available. over the virtual machine category over the IaaS category. Let's talk about the storage services as well. Now, this is again one of the foundation services like compute we have discussed. In case of virtual machine, this is a compute category. We discussed about the network, which is again one of the foundation service which has been used as a basis for making communication from on-prem to the cloud and all other aspects of your deployment. Storage is also considered to be one of the foundation service because it provides you the storage capability over the cloud, not only which can be directly consumed by services, like you can go and use file share services from the storage. The file share services allow you to have a SMB NFS compliant file share created over the cloud. You can go and use it for the blob services to go and store text files, video files, audio files. If you want to stream some of your resources, if you want to provide a location where user can upload some data, or you have some softwares which you want to distribute to the participant or to your customers, all those can be used with the blob service. So there are many services which are offered into the storage category. Just to give you a bit background about the storage, storage is one of the service category where you can have a database management system also deployed, and you can have a storage account. The slide which I have prepared is for the unstructured data storage. So we can go and categorize our storage requirement as structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data. For structured data, we do have RDBMS, we have SQL services and all that. But for the unstructured data, we have a service called Azure Storage, where you have a global accessibility of a storage service. You can go and access it from anywhere. You can make it available directly as a URL, or you can consume it with a API interface. If you're creating some custom softwares, you can go and consume it as one of the background storage for your applications. The data which is being stored, now this is critical because you are entrusting a cloud service provider with your business critical or business sensitive data. So out of the box, whenever you are going to create the storage services, they are always encrypted. They are encrypted with Microsoft platform keys. If you want, you can use your own customer managed keys as well. But data always remains encrypted over the service. And one of the core merit or advancement which happens into consuming a storage service from the cloud is its redundancy, its durability. Why we are saying it durable? Because the redundancy options which are being enabled over a storage account gives the customer a capability of using the business continuity even when a data center fails. First, if there is a data center level outage, your storage can still continue. If there is a disk level outage, your storage will still continue to work. Even if you have a regional outage, your data is still accessible to you. So Microsoft have created multiple redundancy models. To be precise, there are 6 redundancy models which are offered on a storage account. You can go and use local redundancy, zone redundancy, geo redundancy, and geo zone redundancy with read access capabilities. So these are the different redundancy models which are available, and they provide you a durable storage capability. So once you are storing your data, there are multiple copies which Microsoft creates in the background, store it on multiple hardware, on different zones, on multiple regions based on your selection of this high availability option. And then resources can be deployed over it. So this is how this whole environment of storage service looks like. Now, one storage account, which is a general purpose storage account, which is type of SKU, you can call it, or it's a type of type of storage account you can go and build over the Azure environment. One is general purpose, one is premium. If you're creating a general purpose account, it gives you capability of storing text files, audio, video capability, which is blob. You can go and store file shares. You can create file shares over it, and you can go and connect it via SMB NFS protocol. You can go and use it for the message queuing services, where if you have create a decoupled application and you want to go and store messages which can be moved from application module 1 to module 2 to module 3, you can go and use message services. You can use table storage for the structured data, for schemaless structured data you want to go and store. Even the managed disk which are being consumed with virtual machines are also part of the storage services in the background. Although the storage account is managed by Microsoft, but yes, there is a storage which is involved when you are working with the virtual machines as well, because virtual machine contains a VHD or a virtual hard disk, and that virtual hard disk is provisioned on the storage service. There is also a feature of SAN services, which is currently in preview, but you are able to go and configure the SAN based solution over the cloud services as well. And the features like preview, they are going to be in preview for some time. Basis on the inputs and feedbacks coming from the customer, there will be some changes, and then the service will be rolled out in the general availability. That's how the cycle of feature rollout happens into the cloud services. Now, all these services which have been listed there, they have their own unique URL addresses, and they can be accessed from all around the globe, provided you have allowed it. So there is a authentication authorization capability where you can go and control these resources based on your business needs. We'll do a quick demonstration of how the storage accounts can be created. So I can go and create a storage account. First of all, look out for the services. As I said, if you want to read more about it, you can go there. You can go to the storage account. You can create a storage account, and depending on your business requirement, you can select a premium storage account with high throughput, performance oriented storage, or go with a standard storage account, which is going to offer you multiple services inside it: blob, file share, table, queue, data lake storage. All those services are available on one storage account. And this is important. The different redundancy levels, the durability of the storage account is right over here. So as a user, as a tenant, I need to identify what is my expectation from the storage account. Based on that, I'm going to do the selection of redundancy, and Microsoft will make sure that my data is stored on multiple hardware in the same data center. My data is distributed to multiple zone within a region. My data is distributed on multiple regions, which are referred as paired regions. So Microsoft have created a paired region configuration. You select one of the region and Microsoft automatically select the secondary region for you, where the replication of data is going to happen. Or you can go and take a hybrid of geo and zone, geo zone redundancy, where your primary region stores the data on zonal basis, multiple zones, and the secondary region is going to have a local redundancy. So 6 copies of data are actually created when you go and use these two methods, the geo and geozone. You can go and define your requirement from the storage services. You can go and take control of the availability of the storage. You want to make it publicly available, private access. You can take that control right now, or you can go and make that change later as well. You can define the data protection capabilities with the soft delete option to be enabled over the storage account or not. As I said, the data is always encrypted either by Microsoft or by your own keys, but you cannot go and disable that. So encryption is always available. You define tags and you will be able to create a storage account. Now the name of the storage account have to be globally unique. I already have the storage account created with my ARM template I deployed in my first topic of the day. So I do have the storage account created. The storage account have a local redundancy. That means there will be 3 copies of data stored in one single data center. And I'm having all these services available from it. Now just imagine I want to create a quick file share, how easy it could be. I can go to a file share service. I can create a file share. I'll give it a name, test file share. Now, of course, you can go and optimize it based on your own business needs. I'm just going to take it as default. Now I have this file share, and because my storage is a global service, this file share is also a global file share. I can simply click on this connect button, and then I can take a Windows command, a Linux command, or a Mac command to connect to this file share. I'll take the Windows command. From the portal itself, the command is to go and map a network drive back to this file share. And the virtual machine I have deployed, I can simply go and run the command here. Now I'm doing it on the virtual machine, but I have the capability of running the same command over my own laptop, over my on-premise resources, over my other cloud virtual machines, and I would be able to have this network drive, which is coming from a global storage account. That's the capability which a storage account is going to offer you. Just a quick storage account you can go and create, and then you can go and use blob, file share, table, queue, data lake storage, and now also your SAN services. So this was a quick demo of the capability of a storage account on Azure. Now, of course, we haven't discussed about authentication, authorization, role-based access control. But once you go for a detailed training for such topics, you'll definitely have a lot more deep dive to the same services. With this, we have completed all our agenda for the technical topics. I would here highlight you about the benefits of having these trainings to be completed from a learning partner, or you can go to Microsoft Learn and get more insights on the same content as well. You can go and do that. When you go and get yourself certified over a specific technology, the topic which we have covered for this master class comes from AZ104 exam content, which is for the Azure administrator, and it is the associate level certification. So what Microsoft have created is a series of certifications available from fundamentals, which are usually a day session, which helps you to understand what this technology is. So we just answer the question of what is cloud computing, what is Azure, what are the governance compliance, what is security, but we don't go into deep dive of those services. But at an associate level like AZ 104, 204, these are the certification which actually helps you to understand the implementation of the services, how you can go and deploy storage account, what are the different configuration, how you can go and deploy Azure Active Directory, how you can go and manage the premium features of Azure Active Directory. All those are being discussed at the associate level, and then basis on your requirement you can move to expert, which is Azure architect certification for this specific track, or you can look out for the specialty track available over the Azure services as well. If you are someone who is managing remote desktops, if you are virtual environment, so virtual desktop environment, if you are managing SAP workloads, if you are working with DevOps services, if you are working with network security, there are specialty exams also available. So when you go and do these instructor led classroom trainings, you are going to have a lot more deep dive discussions with some real world scenarios being explained to the services which are part of that particular course. You get access to the lab environment. That lab environment is available for 6 months. You can consume it. You can do the same lab multiple times till the time you don't feel comfortable over the service. If you want to go and experience how to deploy the service, you can go and do that for 6 months over the lab environment provided to you. The instructor led classroom, if you are going to attend it from Netcom, you're going to get the recording of the session for 90 days. So if you want to just review some of the content being discussed into the session, you can easily do it with that 90-day access to the class recordings. You do have the Netcom portal available where you will get a lot of information about some of the webinars going on, just like this one, master class for AZ 104. Other technologies webinars also get delivered. You can go and get that information. You will be able to have your certificates, your attendance certificate. You can go and use the recordings. You can go and access your labs. All of that is available from the learner portal. And yes, of course, on the basis of your enrollment with Netcom, you can go and repeat the session, repeat the class if you want. If you have been going, if you have enrolled for AZ 104, for example, and you want to go and repeat your session, maybe after 3 months, 6 months, you can go and do that. These are some of the benefits of having an instructor-led classroom trainings. Over that, there is a benefit for certification. So once you do this instructor-led classroom, definitely you will be actually getting a knowledge which you want to demonstrate to your employer, which you want to go and share with others, that I know this technology, I have done this training, I completed this training, and I have learned specific technologies implementation into this. For that, you can go and do your certifications, which are mapped to all of these Microsoft Learn modules. You can go and get these badges which you have seen into my introduction slide, and then you can use them over the social sites. You can go and share that with your employer, with your new job you are looking for. So this is important that you go and get yourself certified, because if you look at some of the surveys result, you'll find that the employability can increase by 49% when you go and do your certification. And specifically, cloud is one of the technology which is being used a lot. So go get yourself trained over the topic, and of course make sure that you also get your certification for the trainings you go and do. Along with that, I'm just going to share you a quick information about where you can find the foundation, the associate, the expert, and specialty certification. So if you visit the Netcom learning site and you go to the trainings tab, over there you will find Microsoft Azure products. When you click over there, you get a PDF access to the file where there are certificates being listed for you. And not only the name of the certificate, but those are the hyperlinks which actually helps you to know the details of what that specific training consists of. We have taken the topic from Azure Administrator track, which is for AZ 104. But if you want to know more, what is the content, if you go and attend this training for 4 days, which we have covered in 2 hours, if you go and attend it for a 4 days, what will be the content of that, then you should go and look out for the link. I'll do a quick search for you just to let you know how does it looks like. So this is the site which you are going to access. Over this site, you go to training, and then you select Microsoft Azure product. Into this Microsoft Azure product, you have this Microsoft role-based certification path. You just click over it, and here is the role-based certification which is available. You can find Azure Administrator. It's good if you go and do AZ 900 if you are very new to the cloud technology, but this is not mandatory. This is optional. If you want to know about the administration of Azure services, then you should look out for AZ-104 certification program. If you work with security, if you work with DevOps profile, if you're working as a solution architect, network engineer, SAP solutions, maybe Azure Stack, hybrid deployment, software development, AI, data platforms, data engineer, data administrator, you have role-based certification for that. And click on the details and you will get to know about what this certification actually consists of. You can click over this and you will get the details of the schedule as well as the course details. So with that, I'll take you to the last slide for this discussion, where I would highly recommend you to go and get yourself trained over the cloud technologies. These services will be there in the industry for a longer period of time. And this is the time when you should go and plan to get trained and to know about the different cloud services available over the businesses. Also, once you get yourself trained over a specific technology, get yourself certified and increase your employability. So that's it. That's it for the content I have. Now I'll open this forum for any questions you have around the services we have discussed so far. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask that into the chat.
Thank you, Ranjeet. That was most informative. Before we move forward to the Q&A, I'd like to announce that all the participants in today's webinar have been given exclusive free access to official Microsoft courseware on AZ-104. Best part is you also get to claim your digital achievement badges on Microsoft Learn to celebrate your Azure skilling journey. Issued by Microsoft, these badges can help you highlight your newly acquired skills and boost your career potential. I know everyone is looking forward to the Q&A session, so go ahead and start putting your questions into the questions panel. And now I'd like to give the presentation rights over to Rimi, our vendor manager, to introduce our promotions and webinar-related courses.
Thank you so much, and once again, a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined our today's masterclass on Microsoft Azure Administrator. Now, I would like to take you all through some of our handpicked resources, which we think will immensely help in accelerating your learning journey on Microsoft Azure. So, starting off with a quick overview of Netcom Learning and what sets us apart from the other cloud training leaders. We have been recognized as a #1 partner of Microsoft, and we feel immensely proud in mentioning here that we have been awarded the Learning Partner of the Year Award 2022 out of around 3,900 nominations from around the world. A major driver of our expertise is our 25 plus years of industry experience, having serviced over 80% of the Fortune 500 companies in the B2B as well as the B2G space. But not just Microsoft, Netcom Learning provides training solutions across every major technology and business solutions provider. So if interested, do feel free to drop us a note so that we can help build a customized training solution for you or your team. Moving on, we would just like to mention that this session is being recorded, so you can always access the session recording in case you want to touch base on any of the topics discussed during the course of this masterclass. Now, keeping in line with the purpose to promote the values of lifelong learning, we have created our very own learning portal, Netcom 365, that helps individuals and organizations along their learning journey. We have designed this portal to give you a 360-degree view of your team's learning data. Through Netcom 365, you can easily gather insights needed to align your team's skill development with your organization's training objectives. Now, moving on to one of the most exciting aspects of this masterclass is our next offering for you, which is redeeming your digital badge. We are also elated to announce that as a part of this masterclass, all learners are eligible to access the free Microsoft courseware on AZ-104, which is the Microsoft Azure Administrator certification. Additionally, you will also get a chance to claim your digital badge on Microsoft Learn to celebrate your Microsoft skilling journey. We'll quickly give you all a walkthrough of how you can claim your digital badge. So firstly, you need to click on the link which has been provided to you in the chat section of the GoToWebinar viewer, and the same will be alternatively provided to you in the event handout. So once you click on the link, you will land on this landing page, which basically lays down all the steps that you need to follow in order to redeem your digital badge. Please also note that this code that you see here is very important, and this will be your gateway to redeeming the badge. You can go through the steps here while I give you the demo. So these steps are laid down here so that you can always come back to this landing page later, follow along the steps and then redeem your badge. So we'll start with the first step, which is signing into your Microsoft Learn. So once clicking on this step 1, you will land on this Microsoft Learn page. On the top right, you can see the sign in option. So you need to click here. You need to click on if you are already signed in with your working or with your personal account, that is fine, but you can also add another account here. If you do not, if you are already not a user of Microsoft Learn, then you can create a new account by clicking on the create one option here. After putting your email ID, so you can choose to either use your professional email ID or your personal one. You will basically be signed in on the Microsoft Learn page. Here, you need to click on your profile. So on the top right section, you will see the option of profile. This is your step 2. So after coming on to your profile, you will be able to see different aspects here from training to challenges to Q&A. You need to click on achievements. Now you have an option of saying have an achievement code, redeem your code now. So click on the redeem your code now. Now at this step, we want to go back to the landing page where we have the code with us. So you can copy the code from here. Come back to your Microsoft Learn page, paste the code here and simply click on redeem. So now after you have redeemed your badge, it might take some time for the badge to appear here, but you will now have redeemed your digital badge. So now moving on to some of our other latest offerings that we have for you today. Beginning with the Microsoft Skilling Program, which helps you to develop role-based cloud skills. Working side by side are champion-level Microsoft certified trainers who train cloud professionals on the latest Azure technologies and tools. We also bring to you the 2-hour private group training on Azure. So please feel free to register for a demo to get an idea on what this program is about. The training will be delivered by our Microsoft certified trainers with an agenda of understanding the different Azure services and solutions, and will be beneficial for you to devise a roadmap as per your team's learning needs. Moving on to some facts about certifications. So we have developed an extensive ebook for our learners to understand the need and value of getting Microsoft certified. This ebook also lays down the ways a team can thrive through continuous learning. So please feel free to download the ebook and give it a read. Moving on, we have an exciting solution called Netcom Plus Learning Subscription for our enterprise customers. All you need to do is pay one time and you get unlimited access to authorized training from top vendors from Microsoft, AWS, Cisco, and more for a span of 12 months. So currently we have 3 packages available. You can get started for free with a silver pack, which allows you access to 300 plus learning modules. You can upgrade to the gold pack for just $199 and access 400 plus learning modules in addition to the silver pack benefits. And lastly, we highly recommend our most popular offering of all and ideal for our enterprise customers, which is the Platinum package for $2,999. And that can be unlocked if you have more than 10 learners. In terms of the benefits, it gives you the access to 400 plus learning modules and 100 plus virtual instructor-led courses across the top vendors. Next, we have the Learning Passport, which is a flexible team learning package specifically designed and customized for the number of learners you have. So the Learning Passport is redeemable across our entire portfolio, which covers more than 4,000 plus official courses valid over 12 months. Moving on to the recommend courses. So what you see on your screen are some of the role-based certifications that can give you an idea on the roadmap that you can follow after attending today's masterclass. So if you're someone who is a cloud novice or who is just getting started on the cloud, so we would suggest that you get started with the fundamentals, which is AZ900, Azure fundamentals. Alternatively, if you're someone who already knows that they want to create their career in the field of data and AI, so we also have an event upcoming, which is on June 22nd. The link will be shared with you, so please feel free to register for the same. But for the ones who want to approach or who want to take up the more role based or the more technical certifications, the options have been provided here. If you need if you need more consultation or more help with the with choosing one of the aspects or the training here, please feel free to drop us a note. Apart from our virtual sessions, you can also catch the relevant updates related to IT and business training through our social media handles. So please feel free to follow us for all the latest updates. And lastly, the CEO of Netcom Learning, Russell. So he is an avid writer, and you can check out a glimpse of his book, which is a practical, actionable guide on how to boost performance, successfully manage change, and innovate more quickly. That will be all from me. Thank you.
Thanks so much for guiding us through that information, Remy. And now we're going to go ahead and jump right into our question and answer session. First question we have today is, which storage solution replicates data to a secondary region, maintains 6 copies of the data, and is the default replication option?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. I hope it's coming from someone who is working on storage services a lot. Okay, so for this answer, the 6 copies of the data which is maintained on multiple region, the answer is the geo redundancy of the storage services. If you go and select a geo redundant storage, which can be, of course, a geo redundant storage or a geo zone redundant storage, in both of these selections, you are going to have 6 copies of your data, 3 on your primary region, 3 on the secondary region. And if you use a geo zone redundancy, the 3 copies in primary region are distributed on 3 different zones. If you're using the geo redundancy only, then the 3 copies of your data in primary region resides in one single data center. So to summarize, there are 2 options of Azure storage service. One is geo redundancy, one is a geo zone redundancy. Thank you.
Next question is coming from Harry, who would like to know, which type of user account allows an external organization to access your resources?
Okay, yeah, so this is about the identity and access management service we talked about. It comes from Azure Active Directory. While you are working on Azure Active Directory, you can go and create a guest user account. I have displayed it into my demo as well. The February 24th Ranjeet account. That was an external account which was not being created into my Active Directory. I assume that it is coming from my partner organization who want to have access to certain resources. It can be for the purpose of consultancy, for the purpose of deployment or creation of a new service into the cloud. So yeah, of course, these are the guest user account, which are for the external vendors or contractors who need to access your resources.
Looks like we have time for one more question. When virtual networks successfully peer, what's the peering status for both virtual networks and in the peering?
Okay, yeah, so we did that quick demonstration of site A connected to site B. Once you go and do that peering for networks, the first status would be updating. That means the service is getting prepared for that pairing. And once that pairing is being completed, your status will show you as connected. So if you see a status as connected, that means your pairing have been successfully completed over those two networks.
Once again, I want to remind you that as you leave this session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to help us by taking a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience as we are constantly looking at how we can improve our future sessions. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. We want to thank all of you for joining us today, and if you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope that you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us soon. Feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Have a great day, everyone.